Roundtable promises to be scintillating at its best. Let's just leave it at that. I'm not going to add any other descriptive words or any other adjectives. It is going to be scintillating. So you just sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, grab a drink, because it's going to be hot. But before we go into the substantive issues for this evening, I want to turn our attention back to July 31st. That was a very somber day for us. Somber, why? Because St. Lucia recorded its 49th homicide. 49th homicide. Not a gangbanger, which is why it is even more heart-wrenching and saddening, but a 13-year-old little boy asleep in his bed, looking forward to the next day, enjoying his summer holidays. His friends from school will forever be traumatized, knowing that the classmate that they said goodbye to on the last day of school will no longer be returning to school, no longer be sharing jokes with them, having lunch with them, playing sports with them. And I know all too well how that feels, because I too lost a classmate while at school. Granted, I was already in 5th form, and we were getting ready to write CXCs, but even to this day, it's no less sobering, knowing that we had to return to school from the weekend, and one of our classmates was gone forever. So I empathize and I sympathize with the family. And to the family of Melchizedek Tixie, I say my deepest condolences to you. It cannot be easy. I have lost a brother, I have lost grandparents, I have lost friends. But I don't think anything compares to the loss of a child full of potential, a child full of hope, a child whose life has just begun. And this is why this week, the feat achieved by Julian Alfred is even much sweeter, because she presents a beacon of hope for young people, a beacon of hope that anything you determine to do, anything you determine to achieve through perseverance and tenacity, you can achieve. I'm so proud of this young lady. I do not know her personally, but I know of her feats. I know of her wins. I know of her losses. And when she loses, we mourn with her, we grieve with her. And when she wins, we're just as ecstatic and jubilant with her. And I'm so proud that on the heels of such a tragedy, such a traumatic moment, here comes a beacon to say to young people, all is not lost. You can achieve if you desire to. And Julian is not the only one, because on the other hand, just before Julian achieved her magnificent gold and silver at the Olympics, we had Shan Lucien. Shan is a young lady from Auger who represented St. Lucia at the JC pageant and broke a 39-year drought and came home with the crown. I'm so proud of you, Shan. Again, Shan is not of my age group, obviously, and I'm not too familiar with her. I'm not her friend per se, but I know her mom. And I remember Shan as a little girl. Her mom was my music teacher. And if there is a mom who embodies or the epitome of motherhood and pushing your child, it is Mrs. Lucien. Well done, Mrs. Priscilla Lucien. Well done, Shan. Beacons of hope in a very dark and despairing pit that our young people, our youth are facing Well done. Now, I want to share with you a quote. For some of you, you know it. For some of you, it will be the first time that you're hearing it. But I think it's very appropriate at this time. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I'll repeat this. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Joining me this evening at this round table is your humble servant, Mr. Peter Chiquot. You hear what I did? Pico. Peter Chiquot. I'm so excited to have him at this round table that I just amalgamated his two names. And he needs no introduction. But for some of you who may not be aware of who he is, I will ask him to introduce himself and we will begin tonight's roundtable. Welcome, Mr. Chiquot. Please
Thank you, Laura.
Introduce yourself to our listening and viewing public.
Yes, Laura. My name is Peter Chiquot. I was the former Comptroller of Customs, acting Comptroller of Customs. And today we are here. We are going to have an open discussion on the matter, the RoverGate matter. So I look forward to speaking and giving as much information and explanation as I can about this matter. Also, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Julian Alfred on her achievement. Julian Alfred has now become a vision of hope for not just the young kids in St. Lucia, but also the entire Caribbean. Now you have given them hope that they can achieve. I also want to express my condolences to the 14-year-old who got shot in Miku, and as well there was a 3-year-old who died in a fire somewhere in what area it was? I think Prale. It was in Prale, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to extend condolences to the families and hope that the good Lord strengthen them to go through and continue living the legacy of these two individuals.
Yes, exactly. You know, the hope, the despair, the two just cannot go
together.
They have to go together, yeah. Especially in our situation. You cannot divorce the two of them. Yeah. They are not mutually exclusive. But what's disappointing for me, and we will not dwell too much on that, what is disappointing for me is the manipulation, the polarization, the politicization of Julian's
her success.
Her success, her accomplishments, as if, parties are responsible for her success. And we all know that's not true. If Julian didn't have that fire in her belly, if she didn't have that determination as a youngster, and we're told, when you listen to her story, from age 13, yeah. When that first seed was planted, that she was special, that she had insurmountable potential, she determined that she was going to be the best that she could be, and she strove for that. And I am so proud of her for that. So forget about all what we're hearing. She's a product of the SLP. She's a product of this. She's this one, did that. If Julian did not determine that she was going to win gold and did not push herself to win gold and silver in her first Olympic showing, I mean,
that's remarkable.
Remarkable. Yeah. Remarkable. But enough said about that. This is not the forum for this. I'm sure there will be other platforms where that will be discussed and, persons will understand. But St. Lucia, never, ever, 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 ever allow anybody's doubts to take root in your mind. Your children, you push them, you groom them, you see what they are capable of, and you push them to that end. Never allow anybody, no politician, no school teacher, nobody to lord over you that they can do for you better than what you can do for your child or what you can do for yourself.
All right.
So, moving on.
Moving on.
RoverGate.
Yes, the interesting RoverGate.
The interesting RoverGate. It never seems to go away. You know, for some reason, this particular minister in question, Ernest Hilaire, seems to have clouds following him everywhere he goes. Every position he takes, there's always some scandal. There's always some issue that surrounds him. I mean, somebody cannot be so unfortunate, or like the Jamaicans would say, bad lucky, you know? Tell us about your first introduction to Ernest Hilaire and as it pertains to the Range Rover.
Well, in customs, we have had a policy in customs where information is shared on a needs-to-know basis. So when the matter was first started, I knew nothing about it. I knew absolutely nothing about it. In 2014,
when you were the customs, the control of customs.
Yes, I dealt with it when I became the control of customs.
Oh, so when it first read its head, yes, you weren't the controller.
Yes.
Okay.
The vehicle entered. It landed in St. Lucia in December of 2015. When I got promoted to assistant controller of customs in March of 2014, I was transferred to Vieux-Fort as of July 1st, 2014. So while in Vieux-Fort, I didn't have no information about that matter. I returned to Castries in January of 2016. That's just before the 2016 election, when I returned to Castries, and I still had not heard about the matter. So I got involved in the matter, or I got information on the matter somewhere around July of 2016, when the assistant comptroller at the time was on vacation. So I replaced him temporarily. Mm-hmm. It was I think it was a 2-month vacation. So by the time he returned, I handed his office back to him, and that was it. I was not involved in the matter. Mm-hmm. I became involved in the matter on January 30th of 2020. At that time, we were into COVID, so we were asked, the PS Finance requested that we put measures in place to deal with the COVID situation. So we operated at the Customs Department on a shift basis, whereby we would have one shift working on a weekly basis. So a shift would work, shift A would work 1 week, shift B would work 1 week. We did it that way to allow for, if an individual, an officer contracted COVID at the time, because he would have been involved with the rest of the shift, we would have just allowed isolate that shift.
Makes sense.
So the shift at work would work 2 consecutive weeks. Rather than having us go helter-skelter, the shift would work 2 consecutive weeks.
And so there's no contamination.
So there's no contamination. So 14 days, and then that officer, that shift would come back to work, because he would have they would have already spent 14 days out.
Right.
So they'd be able to come back to work and continue the process. So we would never find a time where the department would have been lack of staff. But in order to do that, we have a certain number of officers at all the stations. So what we did in order for us to be able to manage that, we shut down all the non-public service units. Mm-hmm. So all of the units which did not deal with the public, have interaction with the public, the investigators, the post-clearance guys, we brought them in and we just put them on shift at the various locations. Mm-hmm. So we were managing the cargo sheds, we were managing the airports that way. So in January of 2020, January 30th to be precise, we were working shift. When we left, we knocked off at 12 because we were working 8 to 12. And on my way home, I received a call from the former comptroller, Mrs. Anita Montut, requesting that I come back to office because she received a call from the Prime Minister asking to meet with the customs management. So I was like, oh, I was pretty close to my home. So I decided, okay, I was going to turn around. So I live in Mondidon, so I was by NRDF to be precise. So I just drove through Leclerc down to the back by the Baptist Church, that's Darling Road, and I entered the parking lot at the government buildings.
I barely remember the route
that
I took to come here this evening, so, but you remember.
Yes,
wow.
Yes, because this thing is, I mean, I've been living this thing every single day. So when I got to the building, I met Mrs. Montut standing at the downstairs. So I asked, what is this meeting about? And she said she didn't know. She was called by the Prime Minister requesting to meet. So I said, okay. We waited, asked her where the manager. She said, she pointed, she saw only one was coming. So we waited and the three of us went up. When we got to the Prime Minister's office, we met a few people there, the PS, Finance, the Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, the, Cabinet Secretary.
All the big wigs.
All the big guns.
How did you feel at that point? Because you had left and they said, come back.
Yeah,
How did you feel about that? You thought anything untoward was happening?
No, I was curious to find out what the meeting was about. So at that point, the Prime Minister introduced everybody else, and he said that he had taken a decision because of the COVID situation to shut down the country. So he wanted to basically ask customs to withdraw all of their staff from the stations because he wanted the airports shut, he wanted the marinas shut, he wanted the ports shut. So I said, PM, I am not sure. We do not only do examination of passengers at these stations. We have duty-free shops. He said, Mr. Chiquot, all I want is we shutting down the port. We shutting down the country. The Marine Police will be responsible for doing the marine surveillance on the sea.
That was in March, you said, of 2020?
That's February 30th, 2020. So
28th.
In
the end of February.
Yes. So we agreed. He said, okay. So I asked the officer in charge of the enforcement division. I asked him to give me the names of the officers at the stations so I could redeploy them. So when they get back, so we could actually redeploy all the other officers and shut them down, ask him to call Vieux-Fort, inform the officer in charge at Vieux-Fort to withdraw the officers from Soufrière, shut down Vieux-Fort. We said, okay. That was the extent of my conversation in there. So after the meeting ended, we were about to walk out when the question was asked to the Comptroller to give an update on a number of matters that was being investigated by Customs, including the Ernest Hilaire matter. So when the question was asked, I was like, because I really did not have information about the matter. So I expected the Comptroller then to respond to it. And she said, PM, I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. So I was like, how could you say that?
The Comptroller said she doesn't know what to do.
She doesn't know what to do. So I'm like, okay. So then there was an exchange between she and the PM. And she said to the PM, well, PM, Mr. Chiquot is here. Mr. Chiquot, you will take hold of the file, conduct a review of the file, and make recommendations to her moving forward.
That was your
That
directives.
was my instruction. So at the time, there was some issue going on in customs where I had already written for transfer out of customs. So I figured out this was not the forum for me to bring that out. I said nothing. So the meeting ended. The Prime Minister continued. He spoke. He advised that we should continue and we should do the investigation. And so I got up and I left. That was it. I requested the file from the officer, and he took 1 month. 1 month. I requested the file. It was the 23rd of March. The meeting was the 23rd of March. I received the file from the gentleman on the 22nd of April. 1 month later. I kept asking for it, and they keep telling me they will deliver. I never saw it, so I figured out I wasn't interested anyway.
But let's revisit something you said. You said prior to being asked to investigate that particular file,
correct,
you had already put in an application.
Yes, for transfer.
For transfer out of customs.
Yes,
so this was not the whole RoverGate scandal was not what caused you to want to transfer out of customs.
No.
That was already in the works prior to.
There had been, from the time the former comptroller became comptroller of customs, she literally isolated me. I was sitting in an office for 2 years, just sitting in an office. I was not assigned. I was just at work. I was just coming to work. I showed up for work every morning for 6:30. I left work every afternoon for 5:30, 6 o'clock, every day. I did it every day for 2 years.
Not being assigned?
Not being assigned. I did that every day.
At that time, what was your rank?
I was an assistant comptroller of customs.
You were assistant controller?
I was the most senior and the most trained customs officer in the department at the time.
Tell the truth. What did you do?
I did nothing. I just wrote for transfer.
So no, but you said Miss Montut didn't.
I was not assigned.
Why did she isolate you?
Well, I guess she will have to answer these questions, not me.
And you sure you?
And I had no
there's nothing
issues.
that you could have done that you think of that you could have done that could have caused that.
I believe I know what caused it. I never showed Mrs. Montut any animosity. As a matter of fact, when she became comptroller of customs, she came to me and she said to me, I know you're the most senior person in here. I know you're the most knowledgeable person in here, and I really need your help. I said to her, Mrs. Montut, do not worry, I've got you. Because I commit myself, I work with the Comptroller of Customs. So I committed myself to help in the Comptroller of Customs.
You want to share what your speculations are, why you think she would have isolated you?
Because of my experience in customs, I have been around, I had been operating at the management level of customs for many, many years. Many years longer than all of them. So I knew what had happened. I have a lot of history, a lot of memory, a lot of information.
Knowledge.
I have it. So a lot of times when we were discussing matters, I would come in and say, look, this is the reason why that particular process had been put in place. So if you do not know what caused us to change a certain policy or a certain procedure, this is what caused it. So I suppose it may have been intimidation. It may have been probably she felt that I was undermining.
You outshining her.
Because I would never go to her for assistance. Because there's nothing, in my view, there was nothing I could have gone to her and asked her to explain to me. Because I knew it. If they needed to know, they would have to come to me.
Okay.
So there was never that situation where I would have to go to her to ask her to help me in anything.
Okay.
Most times, all the officers would come to me, and that was another issue. So any of the officers, the rank and file, who needed information, whether it be on the law, whether it be on processes, procedures, they would come to me. And being isolated in that office for the 2 years, it gave me the opportunity now to go back into my files to do research, and I left the department with a lot of files. I have a lot of electronic files because I started accumulating files from the time I joined in 1986. So I have a lot of files. I have institutional information. I have it. If you want a letter about anything that has happened in customs, I had it. I have it. So I did a lot of research, and I was basically helping them. And I realized we have a lot of young officers. We used to have a training budget long before of $100,000, $200,000. That shrunk to zero. We were not getting no votes from the Ministry of Finance for training. So we had to do a lot of internal training. And
why is that, do you think?
I think probably because after a few years, and I'm giving you my experience, what I had seen, because of the MO of the Customs Department, when it became dealing with the law, I realized that customs used to ruffle a lot of feathers of people in high places. So you find a lot of, most of the times, it was a lot of persons try to take away the powers of the customs department.
So it's a case of keep them in line by keeping them ignorant.
Keeping them ignorant. So, because we used to challenge, and I learned that when I joined, when Mr. Scholar was Comptroller. When we were sitting in office and a cabinet conclusion comes. That cabinet conclusion will go to the Comptroller. As anything else, the Comptroller receives all correspondence. When the cabinet conclusion comes, if it has an issue, Mr. Scholar, as the Comptroller of Customs, would actually pass it through the staff, asking to identify whatever issues that the cabinet conclusion had. So when we identify the issues, we would write and return to the cabinet and inform them that, look, this is ultra vires the law, and this is what should happen. So that's what I grew up with. So even now, as a retired customs officer, I still do that. Persons come to me and ask me questions. Oh, they have this, how they want to do it, and I tell them, I could give you all the information you want. But if I know you're going to violate the law, I am going to inform the station you've been in this thing up, and they are going to be prepared for you.
Right, so at your own peril. Right. If you need my assistance and I catch you breaking the law, I am going to whistle on you. Right.
I mean, I'm seated in my office as a customs officer, and people come to me and they ask me to help them. Now, Laura, one of the things about me in my 10 years as a customs officer, I have spent so much money helping people. I mean, especially at Christmas time. I don't think there is one happy customs officer at Christmas time. That's the worst period of the year for us. As a matter of fact, we had been trying to convince governments, successive governments, to stop this Christmas barrels thing, because it is a nightmare for customs. Managing that is a nightmare. Now, when it started over the first 8 to 10 years, I handled it on my own. I just had a team of officers working with me, and we were doing it. I mean, these guys were my life. I depended on them. I literally fell in love with these people to a point that even now as I retire, I still rely on these officers. You know what I mean? I still call them up, I still check on them, and so it was a very expensive thing for me. And I think because of that, a lot of the staff were closer to me than they were to her. So I guess that caused some confusion, and she figured out that she would have just put me in this office. So I had no issue with it.
So you were there for 2 years, collecting a salary, and...
Well, I was involved because even the public, the importing public, would come to me.
Right.
So we would sit down, we would discuss, and I would give instructions to the staff.
So you
basically
engaged yourself,
yes,
even though you
yes.
were not assigned,
yes.
but you engaged yourself. You didn't
yes.
just sit there and
no.
take our taxpayers'
no.
money
no.
and show nothing for it.
No.
You engaged yourself.
No. If I had to do that, I would have go out of my skull. I would have just go crazy.
Right.
So I found a way to basically grow myself. I grew myself by going back and doing a lot of research in customs and, you know, just helping everybody. I used to help. I still have people calling from overseas asking me for information. Oh, I got a call. I want to come to St. Lucia, and I was speaking to this person, and they tell me the best person to call to ask for information is you. I said, but I'm retired. You know, so it still happens. Once
a public servant, always a public servant.
Yeah, well, right? I still help.
Right. Still help. So let's move forward to when the PM asked for that information, and she couldn't, and she said, and you know, she handed it over to you.
She handed it over to me. So I got the file. On the, like I said,
but you didn't have that file. You had to go to.
No, I had never seen the file.
Okay,
I had never seen.
But let's go back. You said in 2016 when you were acting as the assistant controller, because the assistant controller was on vacation. Yes. You had gotten.
I was performing his function.
His function. So
that matter was already with the investigating unit.
Okay. But so that file didn't cross your desk then? Okay.
No. I never had no discussion on the file.
All right, because of the needs to know policy.
Yes, and it was already been handed to the investigators, so it never came to my desk.
Okay, very well.
It never came to my desk.
So the first time it came to you is when the Prime Minister asked about it?
Yes.
Okay.
So the file was given to me on the 22nd of April, and a week later, I decided, because the 22nd of April was a Thursday when the file was handed to me. So the file was handed to me at 12 noon on Thursday, the 22nd. So I took the file because I was already out of the building. In fact, they met me, they said that they had the file for me. So I walked back to the building, collected the file, went into my office, unlocked my drawer, put it in the drawer, locked the drawer, and went home. Because I know I was coming in, I work in Friday morning. But when I leave work on Friday, I don't come back in office until Monday week after. Right,
because it's still COVID and your period was ended. Okay.
So since I got the file on Thursday, it was my intention to review the file on Thursday. But as the most senior person at the time, on duty, the Friday, all issues come to you. So I did not have time to go through that file in the half day. So I figured out that, you know, I'm going to do the file when I come back to work the following Monday. But I kept getting calls the following week while at my home asking me about the file.
Who's calling you?
I kept getting calls from the PM's office because apparently they were informed that I was supposed to have given a report by the 23rd of April.
But you only got it the 22nd of April. Oh,
because I kept asking.
And so the pot thickens.
I kept asking, who informed you all that I would have given you all a report on that file on Friday?
When you only got it.
But I got it yesterday.
Yesterday, right.
So that was the following week. So I said I only got it on Friday and I'm not at work. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go into office tomorrow morning, go through the file, do the review, and a report will be presented to the Comptroller.
And the reason that they would probably call you is because you were supposed to have received that file back in March.
In March.
And you only received it
on the 20th.
Okay, so they had a deadline by which they had to report back to the PM or whomever, but that is based on you getting it in a timely fashion.
I have no idea if they had a deadline to submit a report.
All you know is in March they were supposed to be giving you the file.
They were supposed to give me a file, do a review,
so that you could do the review, and you never got the file in March.
I never got it.
You never got it in the first 2 weeks.
Nope.
The first fortnight of April. You got it on the 22nd.
I got it at 12 noon on February
April 22nd?
Yes, April 22nd. I got it on April 22nd at 12 noon. Because when I got the file, I took my pen and I recorded, received from the officer at 12 noon, Thursday on the date, and I put it in the journal.
St. Lucia, and especially young people, bear that in mind. Always cover your rear. You receive something, you know you were supposed to have gotten it, in a timely fashion, you didn't, record.
Yes.
It doesn't hurt, because you know what? The easiest thing to fail us is our mind, because by the next day, you probably have forgotten if you do not record.
That's correct. And I don't know if I'm not sure if that is done in the other departments, but when you're working in law enforcement, you must be on the ball. These are not things you take for granted. You must be on the ball. And so when I came in, I went in the following day after receiving the call, and I went through the file. Within 5 days, I had gotten to a point where I had done many meetings, interviews, because that was all I was doing, just working on that file, because I needed to get rid of the file in a
because
hurry.
You had been getting called. Yeah.
So I prepared, when going through the file, one of the documents I got from the file was a letter from the Attorney General indicating that Dr. Ernest Hilaire should be re-engaged. So
that's after you've done the review?
Yeah, while going through the file,
Oh, okay, all right.
So the Comptroller came to me and she said to me that the PS requested a status report on what I've done so far. So I said to her, no problem. I will give it to you the following day. So I prepared a status report. In the status report, I indicated everything that I had done, all the individuals that I had met with, the information I had received, and I also did indicate that I had prepared a re-engagement letter, which is a recommendation from the Attorney General's chambers for Dr. Hilaire. And that re-engagement letter, I'm just in the process the same day, today, to take this letter to the Attorney General for vetting before it comes back to her for signature and dispatch. And I gave her the document, and I told her, in fact, I emailed it to her, and I told her that I was just on my way to the Attorney General's chambers. But on my way to the Attorney General's chambers, I missed a call from her. So by the time I picked up the call, she had hung up. So I was already inside the office. So I said to her, I would have called her shortly. Then I saw a text message on my phone that flipped me from her. And I took offense to the text. So anyway,
You want to share what the text was?
Yes, the text actually said that you must remember that I am the Comptroller of Customs, and you have no authority to go discuss anything with anybody if it does not come through me. So I was like, okay. So I asked.
Okay, so that would flip me too, because she was given the opportunity to do the investigative work, and she said she doesn't know what to do.
Correct.
And so she passed it over to you.
Correct.
And that was agreed upon by the PM and whomever else that was there at the time.
Correct.
Because thereafter they were calling you.
Correct.
And so you were doing the investigative work, not her.
Not her.
Had you briefed her on what you had come up with at the time?
Yes, because she was sitting at the meetings, all the meetings we were having in the office. She was part of it. Because I would have invited her.
Right. So she was apprised.
She was.
As you were going through,
yes.
she was apprised.
Yes.
So why would she then send you that remind you that she's the controller of customs and not you, when she's already aware of everything that's going on?
That's a question she will have to answer. So when I saw that, I was actually sitting with the AG? The AG, in the AG chambers with the lawyers. So I showed them the text and I said, what is that about? I said, okay. So we did vet the letter, the re-engagement letter, and I went back to her office. I went to her and I asked her, what was that about? And she said, oh, I read your report, and it's a good report. I hope you didn't go and discuss that report with anybody. So I said, but nobody requested a report from me. You were the one who requested a report. And I gave you the report. And I informed you that I was going to vet
the re-engagement letter.
The re-engagement letter. So here it is. She said, oh, well, the report is okay. The report is a good report. So I said, okay, here is the re-engagement letter. It has been vetted by the Attorney General. Here is the re-engagement letter dated September, I forget the date that was on it at the time.
But that we were still in 2020.
You're in 2020. So I handed her the letter. And that was it.
Okay. So we're due for a break, but when we come back, we'll discuss what happened after that letter.
No problem.
Stay tuned, St. Lucia. We'll be right back.
If you're going to grow your country, you have to grow the capacity. You have to make sure they're healthy. You also have to make sure they're well educated. But that takes a plan. It takes a commitment. And it's not about just words. It has to be much more significant. And I have not heard anything here today, Mr. Speaker, that would give me any comfort, nor should it give any other St. Lucian comfort, that they're going to use this opportunity they found on their lap appropriately, and to make sure that the young people of this country and the workforce of this country are going to get jobs that they can make careers of, jobs they can raise their families on, jobs in which, yes, they can become international and raise their own standard of living. That should be the aspiration. I did not hear any of that today, Mr. Speaker. I thank you. Okay? The member from Castries, he said it was only a madman who would believe that tourism would recover. Mr. Speaker, I'm challenging you.
Anything I say, you say, I'll do it. That's a challenge. Anything, Mr. Speaker, I say that the member from Rico South says, I'll play it. I challenge him. Anything he says, I say, play it.
Flashback.
The government is continuing as usual, as if nothing happened. The government of St. Lucia is the only government I believe that tourism will get back to how it was pre-COVID. I think it's the only government in the world that believes that. There's no other government. There's no other government, I think, who believes that except the government of St. Lucia. So what do? We continue with business as usual. We continue to build an airport based on the fact that our airport would get its income from arrivals. Are you serious? Do you really believe? I never knew. I never understood the impact of tourism in St. Lucia.
Welcome back, St. Lucia, and thank you for staying tuned to this scintillating episode of The Roundtable. We're discussing the RoverGate Scandal. With me is Mr. Peter Chiquot, former Comptroller of Customs. When we left, Mr. Chiquot, we were speaking about the re-engagement letter that had been vetted by the AG and that you had presented to the then Comptroller of Customs, who is Mrs. Anita Montut.
Yes.
So take us from that point.
So I handed her the letter, and because of the text, I realized that, look, she should not have written that to me in the first place.
There is something, so that was your first red flag.
Right. So I said, I need to respond to that. So I went to the office the following day, and I wrote requesting advice as to how I continue with the matter.
Whom did you write?
I wrote to the Comptroller of Customs requesting advice as to if she had a particular way she wanted me to continue the investigation. I needed to find out from her what she wanted me to do. And I said to her in the letter was dated 19th of May.
Is that usual for you to write instead of just maybe taking a cool walk and speaking with her in person?
One of the things you will learn about me is I love to document. I love to write. So because most times persons say, I never saw that, I never spoke to you, I never did this. But when I write to you, you are obligated to respond to me in writing. I will not take nothing less than a response in writing.
Okay. Did you have many bad experiences coming up in the ranks as a customs officer?
Too many.
Which would have...
Too many. Too many. My life in customs has been a roller coaster. For whatever reason, people do not like you. For whatever reason, people just feel that they should try to take advantage of you. And
but you are a rebel. Coming up, bucking the system, pushing against the status quo.
Yes, and I think I can say that from the time I joined the department in 1986, again, I will always call on Mr. Scholar. Mr. Scholar taught me so much.
Right, so it's the foundation that was laid for you.
Yes, this man. And he always said to me, Chiquot, whatever decision you make, even if you make a bad decision, just as long as you have information to justify the reason why you made that decision, justify it. If it is wrong, correct it and move on.
Right, okay. Good lesson, young people. Good lesson.
Yes,
do not shy from your responsibilities or your accountability. If you made a mistake or you made a bad decision and you can prove or justify why you made that decision, it's okay. If it's a bad one, fix it and move on. Now, this is something that I am continuously working on in myself.
Yes.
I'm dwelling on, oh my God, I made that mistake. Oh my God, I made that mistake. Oh my goodness. I would spend sleepless nights dwelling on that and how I could have made it better. Although I have moved on past it, I've made the necessary adjustments, but I'm still thinking, I can't believe I made that mistake.
Yes.
But it's a good thing to do,
yes,
to move on, because you waste a lot of time. And you
crying over
fix
you cannot drink the spilled milk.
It has already spilled.
It's spilled. Clean it up and go.
And move on.
You know, and that's one of the things. I think a lot of the support I was getting at customs is because as a customs officer, I took responsibility for even my unit if something was wrong.
Right. So the accountability was always there. So your unit, your subordinates could always depend on you.
Depend on me
even
for that.
Even if they know they made a mistake, I can always go to Mr. Chiquot and he will make it right.
Yes.
And he'll not be Debbie Downer on me. He's going to be like, okay, you made a mistake.
Yes.
Do you know why? Do you know how?
Yes.
And fix it.
And not only that, I wouldn't come down on them. They would pay the price, but I would not permit no other senior person or other organization to come after them or take advantage. I would defend them. I would defend them. And believe you me, most persons in the public service who knew me knew that I would defend my people.
Awesome.
Up to a day like today, I defend customs.
All right.
I mean, I will not permit people to come and talk bad of customs around me at all. You know, especially because we are a law enforcement agency.
Right. So you wrote that letter.
So I wrote the letter to her, asking her, you know, you need to give me direction because you just asked me to review a file. I reviewed the file. It required an engagement letter. I wrote the engagement, and here's what you're saying to me. So I said in that letter, dated 19th May, I think it was, that with immediate effect, I have stopped all review of all work on this file until you give me instructions in writing. That was written on the 19th of May. I never got anything in writing. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Montut would walk into the office. She probably wouldn't even greet me. But I have no issue with that. I would go to her, I would talk with her, you know, because when it comes to work, I would go and discuss work. We're not the friends who would go out and lime and, you know, we're doing work as professionals. We sit in the office and we work. So I did not do anything on the file. The letter dated May 19th to the Comptroller asking for advice on the investigation had never been written to. And honestly, Laura, I never did any more work on the file.
So you stopped work on May 19th?
On May 19th. So I got the file on April 22nd. I stopped work on the file on May 19th.
So there seems to be a theme running a month. So you were supposed to get the file in March. You got it in April. You worked on it from April to May, and you stopped work in May. What was the reaction? What was the fallout from that, from you stopping? Because obviously, the persons who required the review.
Well, I was waiting for instructions, so I realized the instructions were not coming. But I knew I was going on. I was due to go on vacation in a couple of weeks. So I sat and I waited, and when I realized I wasn't hearing anything, I penned another letter to the Cabinet Secretary and the PS Finance demanding that they get me out of customs.
So that was your second attempt to get out of customs.
And I copied it to the union. I left the building, I went to the union, I sat down with Mr. Claude Paul for probably an hour and a half, and we were discussing.
And Claude Paul would be the General Secretary
of the CSA.
Of the CSA.
All right. So we sat down, we discussed, and I said, look, what is happening in that building, I cannot deal with it. I need to get out of that. So he said to me, okay, he will meet with the Cabinet Secretary, they will decide. I said, okay. I went back to office. I was due to go on vacation on the 25th of
June.
On the 25th of June. On the 12th of June, on the 10th of June, Mrs. Montut called, either the 10th or the 12th, the date, I must clarify these dates. Mrs. Montut called an administrative meeting for the managers. So we went into the meeting room and not knowing what the meeting was about. So I thought it was something to do with the whole COVID situation. And she said to me in front of everybody, oh, Mr. Chiquot, I was called to a meeting yesterday and to discuss your transfer. Oh, you're going to be getting your transfer. The Cabinet Secretary informed me that he will send it to you in writing. So I was like, okay. So one of the assistant comptrollers said, Madam Comptroller, do you think we need to discuss that here? Do you think all of us need to hear that? And I said, no. I want you all to know. I need you all to know what is happening with me. So
she calls a meeting.
Yes, an admin meeting.
To inform you.
To inform me.
That a matter that had been private up until that time was coming through.
Yes. She informed me that she was informed by the Cabinet Secretary that I would be transferred to the Ministry of Commerce. So I was happy. So I walked out of my office. I picked up my phone and I called Mr. Claude Paul. And I said, Mr. Paul, I wrote requesting that you intervene if they do not get me out of customs by a particular date. Please, hold on to that. They have given a date where I will be transferred. Let us wait for the date.
So what date were you going to be transferred by?
I tell them I needed to get out of customs by the 19th of August.
That's when you were coming back from vacation?
I just needed to get, I didn't want to, my birthday is actually the 26th of August.
Oh, so you didn't want
to. So I didn't want to be in that kind of mess. I mean, it's because I would not take a day off. I would be at work.
Right.
So I told him the 19th of August, and he said, okay. And I said, well, if they do get me out by the 19th of August, I am going to spend something else to you so that we take whatever action we need to take to get out. And he said, okay. So I waited, I went on vacation. So prior to me going on vacation on the 12th, I think it was the 12th of June, I realized I'm not getting any information from Mrs. Montut in writing on the investigation. So I decided that I was going to write my report. I was going to write my report on the file and make my recommendations to Mrs. Montut.
So that the report that you had given her,
Right.
you were going to make it official at this point.
Yeah, well, the analysis of the file. So that file, that is dated the 12th of June.
Okay, so before we go into the analysis of the file, we'll take another break. And when we come back, we'll deal with the analysis of the file and everything that occurred thereafter.
Correct.
Stay tuned. It's getting hot, St. Lucia. We've dealt with the background, and now we're getting to the meat. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do we have a government in place that cannot manage the country sufficiently that if you're trying to build a house, that if you are trying to set up a business that require a water connection, it means that you can't be connected? What are you supposed to do with your plans? And this is the state that our water infrastructure has actually reached in the country. So Bradley is absolutely right when he said that, look, this is not just basic, this is absolutely essential. And WASCO making this announcement, the government must really do something urgently. And this is one of the most important and crucial initiatives that they could undertake to ensure that a critical component of our infrastructure is dealt with.
Public debt in 2022 was at $4,395.1 million. In 2023, it is at $4,783,000,000, almost a 400 million increase in debt. Now remember, this is the government that spoke about for the first year they had to do no borrowings. And all of a sudden in the last 2 years, which means that our debt to GDP, which was just at 69.5% in 2022, has gone to 72.9% in 2023. And these are just preliminary figures.
Welcome back to our final segment of this roundtable, the RoverGate Files. With me is Mr. Peter Chiquot, and we're going to deal with, in this segment, the official review.
Yes.
So you had written to Mrs. Montoute.
Right.
You had given her the report.
Right.
You ceased work in May, a month after.
1 month, yes.
And the reason for that was because of an inappropriate text message which was sent
to me.
Confusing or ambiguous, if you want to choose a better word. Text message that was sent to you, and you'd written to her asking for further clarification,
guidance,
on the way forward. Right. You never got that.
Never.
But you instituted, or you looked again into the opportunity or the potential of moving, transferring, and you were informed in the meeting
I would have been transferred.
That you would have been transferred.
Correct.
And what happened after that?
Right. So I just opened my file. The re-engagement letter that I prepared for Dr. Hilaire is dated May 12th, 2020. So that's the letter I prepared, got vetted, and submitted to Mrs.
Now tell us a little bit about the re-engagement letter. We spoke about it, we glossed over it, but we never really told the people what is the re-engagement letter. So synopsize it for us.
Right.
What is it, and what is contained within that engagement letter?
Right.
Why did you need to re-engage him?
So the issue had been that Dr. Ernest Hilaire supposedly imported a motor vehicle, a Land Rover, in his name. But the information, the documentation received from correspondence, a request from the PS Finance initiating an investigation to establish the authenticity of or the ownership of the vehicle. But the documents received were insufficient. They did not show Dr. Ernest Hilaire being the owner of the vehicle. Instead, it showed the government of St. Lucia. So the investigators and the comptrollers and them, the comptroller previous to Mrs. Montut, which is Mr. Roddy Alcindor, and also Mrs. Montut, when she became comptroller, they had been dealing with it. And one of the recommendations with the Attorney General, one of the recommendations coming out of the Attorney General was to re-engage Dr. Ernest Hilaire requesting documentation. So my letter is actually dated May 12th, and it reads, well, it's attention Mr. Thaddeus Antoine from Thaddeus Chambers, because Thaddeus Antoine had indicated in writing that he would be dealing with Dr. Ernest Hilaire, all matters with Dr. Ernest Hilaire as his legal representative. So the document was basically saying, captioned, request for documentation and perfect entry for importation of vehicle. So that was what was written. It's a one-page letter, very simple letter, requesting that he submit the documentation that is required to authenticate the vehicle being his.
Because not insufficient documentation had been provided prior to that.
Prior to that.
So you're basically asking him for whatever documentation that was missing.
Correct. So the letter dated, the letter direction on investigation missing government asset, because that's how it was referred to in the letter from the PS Finance. That letter to her asking for information is dated May 19th, right? So I wrote that to her asking for direction. I gave her her report that she requested, the report that I suppose she sent the text to me, informing me that I was representing the department and not myself.
At that point, was there any issues with you and Dr. Ernest Hilaire?
No, never.
Had you ever had any engagement with him before?
Dr. Ernest Hilaire and I went to Castries Comprehensive School together. We have always been friends. Dr. Hilaire, prior to this matter, would not pass me on the street. If he do stop, whether he's driving or not, if he do stop.
I'm just trying to figure out why she would think, because basically I feel that you had it out for Dr. Ernest Hilaire. From the text message that she sent to you, informing you that this is not, you're not representing yourself, you're representing the department, says to me that you have a vendetta against the subject of the review, and so you're going to profit that opportunity to stick it to him. You know what I mean?
And that's what you gathered from that.
That's what I gathered from that.
Here's what I gathered from that. I felt that she was intimidated by me doing this thing. So it was basically trying to tell me that, look, you need to know your place. Because she has said that to me on a previous occasion. You need to know your place. I am the comptroller. And it's simply because of decisions that I may have made. Simple decisions, like asking staff to attend a meeting. You know? And she takes offense to that.
Because I'm thinking, as the assistant is supposed to be just that, her assistant, a right hand, a left hand.
Yes.
And whatever you do redounds to her. And if you have not been making bad decisions in the past, you know, that is calling to question the reputation or the integrity of the department, I cannot understand or infer that you're going to damage the reputation of the department when you go out there. So I'm thinking that it is the subject on the review that is the problem, not the department. Because, but
Laura,
anyway,
simply put, and I think I could say that, I believe Mrs. Montut thought I was a threat to her seat. Simply put.
Okay, so we're moving on.
And we're moving on.
Right.
So I wrote the letter. I asked for information. She never gave me information. Up to today. So I wrote an analysis of the file on the 12th of June. The 12th of June is a Friday. Because I was going on vacation on the 15th of June. Right? So I sat down in my office and I did an analysis of the file. And that analysis of the file, if you see I have a well color coded analysis of my file, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages long. Right? Now, remember that analysis of the file is 8 pages long. So I wrote this here and I submitted it.
Give us just a general idea of what the review was.
The review was basically giving information as to what was contained within the file. Giving information as to what level of investigation that the officers did, what information that was in the file that they had overlooked.
So what did they overlook? Tell us a little bit more about it, because we have heard a lot of things, but we want to break it down so that people can understand. You did the investigation, and what did you find?
So the analysis was basically indicating that they had not done a sufficiently good investigation in order to close this matter. The vehicle was delivered on a pre-delivery. There are certain conditions by which...
What is a pre-delivery?
A pre-delivery is basically a privilege afforded somebody with the goods by allowing them to receive the goods prior to the settlement of the perfect entry.
And what is the perfect entry?
A perfect entry is an entry with all documentation, all signatures, all concessions approved, all official documents submitted, original documents submitted, and paid.
Okay, so we're saying because of his stature, his status, he's an ambassador, he's returning home, you allow him to take possession of the vehicle. Considering that he's going afterwards to send in all documentation and all fees.
All fees. So all of that would have been settled. Now, this privilege is not given to anybody.
No, it wouldn't be given to me.
It may be given to you, Laura. For example, as an administrator, if I know you personally, I could probably take the responsibility and say, yes, Laura, I trust you enough and I will give you a pre-delivery on that, and come and pay me tomorrow. You could pay me tomorrow. If you do not have all the money, come and pay me tomorrow. So what I will do, I'll just authorize a manual release for you.
Okay, I understand.
But then at the end of the day, I have the responsibility to ensure that you pay.
So that you're accountable. So if I don't pay,
I am accountable.
It's like a surety.
It's a surety. So I mean, as a senior, we do it. There's no question about it. We do it. You understand? So sometimes somebody comes and they do not have sufficient money. But you know the person can pay. You know that person. I mean, you not do that with anybody you do not know of the street.
You know what they say. You release it on the own cognizance.
Yes. So you help somebody, and we do it. We do it. We do it. There's no question about it. And if there's any customs officer who says that they're not doing it, that person may have a problem. I am telling you straight. This is we do it, and
there's leeway for that.
Well, yeah, the comptroller, I mean, if you go through the law, you could go through the law and find sections in the law that will permit it, but it will permit the comptroller. Now, all customs officers work on behalf of the comptroller. However, we used to have a situation where all and sundry used to give pre-deliveries. So that needed to stop.
Okay, I understand.
So the department had to streamline that to have all pre-deliveries basically controlled. So many internal memos had gone out to the staff informing them that only particular individuals at particular levels have the authority to give.
It's like at school, right? You can't mete out corporal punishment to any child. It has to be done by the principal of the school. Okay, great, we get you.
So all of these measures were put in place in order to prevent the indiscriminate delivering of goods without the payment of or without accounting for it. And so when we get individuals, high-profile individuals, we extend that level of thing, pre-delivery to them. And one thing that persons must know: the only person in this country who is entitled to duty-free to everything is the Governor General.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Okay? And even with the Governor General, there's still some paperwork that must be done. The Prime Minister's office has to take it. All the other concessions that are given to agencies has to become with some authority. So you must have an authority, and no authority comes from no politician's desk. It comes from the relevant body. So if, for argument's sake, I'm sitting in my office and I get a letter authorizing me to give you duty-free by a minister of government, I mean, I wouldn't even send that back to the minister. I would just tear that and throw that, because that's how I would have dealt with it.
Because they have no standard.
They have, you don't have that, you know. So if you want anything duty-free, and I'm telling you, this round table is going, you need a month of round tables if I have to dissect customs for you, because customs is just not what people think, because the information is not really out there. And so issuing that pre-delivery to Dr. Ernest Hilaire, he was given a certain amount of time.
How much time was he given?
Normally we give 3 months.
3 months.
Right?
So within that 3 months,
all paperwork
the perfect entry should be
submitted. So if the vehicle landed on the 15th of December 2018.
Oh.
No, 2016. Yes. No, it was 2015, sorry. The vehicle landed on the 18th of December 2015. That's the time it landed in
that December. Long this thing has been going on?
Yes.
Okay. So it landed on the 2015th. It landed in 2015, in December of 2015.
December of 2015. Now realize Christmas is just 10 days away. So here you have a diplomat coming back home. He brings a vehicle. I mean, we wouldn't keep his vehicle. Nothing happens at Christmas but your barrel. You hardly find general cargo. Much attention is given to general cargo because we focus most of the attention on barrels. So your cargo might get lost in the process. And that's the reality because of the manpower issue that we have to deal with it. And so my thinking is, because I was not involved at that time, the pre-delivery was given to Dr. Ernest Hilaire because it was approaching Christmas.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
Because you not want to deprive the gentleman of his car over Christmas, a returning diplomat, the gentleman has served, and you know. So issuing that pre-delivery, he had 3 months. So by January, February, March, that should have been settled. March of 2016, that should have been settled. But it was never settled. And nobody wanted to go and get that settled. And I'm telling you, one of my biggest challenges in dealing with this matter is the fear of having to deal with this matter. And I kept telling my officers, look, as long as you're within the framework of the law and you're doing what you are expected to do, nothing can happen to you. It got so frustrating. And even before I get there, after I issued these letters, I went on vacation. I never heard anything. I was on vacation and I was home and I got a call from a friend of mine asking whether or not I was a politician. So I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, oh, I heard your name in the house. And I heard Dr. Ernest Hilaire talking about you in the house. And Dr. Ernest Hilaire saying a lot of things about you. And I said, Ernest speaking about me in the house? What is he talking about? And he said, Dr. Ernest Hilaire was speaking about me in the house, saying that he had a vehicle and Chiquot said he will come and take it. So I'm like, so I hung up my phone, put on my TV, and but he had already finished his contributions. So I didn't get to hear the presentation. So I waited for the night for the rebroadcast, and I listened to him. Anyway, I came back to work on the 25th of June. And when I came back to work on the 25th of June, this thing spiraled out of control. Because I was sitting on the wharf, and I got a call from a friend of mine, a so-called whistleblower, and he said to me, Chiquot, boy, I just called you to tell you, your letter will be leaked. I was like, my letter will be leaked? I asked him, what letter? And he said, your letter you wrote to Alan Chasney. I say, your letter, I wrote a letter to Alan Chasney. He tell me, yes, it's going to be leaked. It's going to be leaked, I tell you. I ask him, who is going to be leaking it? He tell me, Richard Frederick will leak it. So I was like, I really want to see what letter that
Are
I
you
wrote.
sure that you didn't write a letter to Alan Chasney
as a matter of fact,
Minister? Because we can
Laura,
understand if you wrote a letter, because
Laura,
he was the Prime Minister and he
Laura,
asked for a review.
Listen to me. Alan Chasney knows very well that when I am doing my work, nobody can ask me to do anything that I'm not supposed to do. It will not be done. I had never even, the only discussion I had on Ernest Hilaire's matter was when I went to the meeting on the 23rd of March with the Comptroller of Customs, and she assigned me the file. Alan Chasney and I had never spoken on that.
Okay.
Up to a day like today, Alan Chasney and I is now, if we meet, you ask me, we'll have a little laugh over this thing.
Yeah.
But up to a day like today, Alan Chasney and I have never had a conversation, a detailed conversation on this thing. Up to a day like today, in spite of all what people say now, as a public servant, the public service rules mandate that you don't go and speak on these things. I wrote relentlessly, asking for permission.
I remember that.
Asking for permission to speak. And it's written in the law. Section 4 of the Customs Act say an office of the Comptroller shall be established, and the Comptroller of Customs is under the direct control of the Minister of Finance. The law does not speak to the PS Finance as my boss, you know. It speaks to the Minister of Finance. So if I have a problem, the person I have to go to is my boss, the Minister of Finance, and I have never gone to Mr. Chasney. I had never gone to Mr. Chasney. But anyway, let's get back to this letter there. So I prepared this report, an 8-page report, and I submitted it under confidential cover to the Comptroller of Customs.
Who was at the time?
Mrs. Montut. So when I got...
Not Spider's wife, people.
Not
this is Anita
Montut. When I got the call and they said my letter would have been leaked, I waited to see the letter. And here is what I found. This letter was released as the Chiquot report. You heard about the Chiquot report. Richard Frederick had the Chiquot report.
Because he gets files.
Because as to where he get it, I have no idea. But he had a copy of the Chiquot report. So when I saw that, I mean, people started calling me, asking me, but how could you write a letter with so many errors? And I'm like, but first to begin, how did he get it? And second, so I say, okay, you know what? Send me the letter. They sent me the letter, and I did a comparison between what I wrote and what Richard Frederick showed on his show. And what Richard Frederick showed on his show is what that is attached to Ernest Hilaire's lawsuit against me as well. But you could see that, Laura, you could see the color coding in the document, right? All the color coding parts of that letter was removed from the letter showed on as the Chiquot report.
So you mean it was a doctored document?
Laura, all the color coding you see
there. It was
there,
redacted.
all the color coding you see there does not appear on the Chiquot report.
So the Chiquot report was a redacted report.
Yes.
In other words, Lucia, what it means is sections of it was blacked out or removed.
Half of the letter was removed. Half of the report was removed.
And this is the man that thousands of you flock to. How may I help you? How may I help you? And he's presenting to you a redacted report as a complete report.
And that report was handed to the Comptroller of Customs, Mrs. Anita Montut, under confidential cover.
So it means she's the only one who would have had it?
Well, no, she would not have been the only one, because the investigator had a copy.
So between the investigator, herself, one of the two, would have leaked that.
The officer in charge would have had a copy as well.
So these three people outside of you.
Yes. But my mistake is I did not mark this report. I did not mark this report because normally what I do, I put marks on all my letters. And
so you would have known who.
So I know where it came
from.
But I did not mark that one. So I have no idea who leaked it. But it was given on the confidential cover to the Comptroller.
So regardless of whether you had marked it or not, the fact that it went out on the confidential cover, neither of these three individuals should have given anybody.
No, because that's an internal memo, and that should have been kept with confidential
within the department.
Because that's the standard we use for our internal correspondence, right? So I submitted that. I came back to work, and this thing just spiraled out of control. And the Chiquot report was all over the place, and then I start. So I got a letter on the 18th of August. I came back on the 25th of June. July passed. On the 18th of August, I got a letter because I did inform Mr. Claude Paul that I wanted to be out on the 19th of August. So I got a letter from the Public Service Commission. So I was happy. Oh, I get my transfer, I get my transfer. And when I opened the letter, I saw it was a letter for me to act as Comptroller. Effective the 18th.
Okay, that's a bomb.
That's a bomb. It was a bomb to me. So when I got the letter, I was like, but wait, something is wrong.
I was not asking for a promotion.
I wanted for a transfer.
I wanted out.
I wanted out. So when I got that letter, I realized there was a problem right away. The letter was dated the 18th. I wrote to the cabinet, to the public service commission and the cabinet secretary, informing them that there was an anomaly, that I was an assistant comptroller of customs, and I just received a letter appointing me to act comptroller, and I was sitting in a vacant spot. So what happens to me as a deputy? So you all need to fix this thing. And I submitted it. So that was the letters. These are the letters that I wrote. I wrote the letter. Then I became comptroller.
So what happened to Mrs. Montut? Because you're acting in her position now.
Well, I understood that, if they give me to act, I suppose she would have to vacate the seat. I understood she was transferred. I only found out why she was transferred when I went on pre-retirement leave. I never knew.
Why was she transferred?
Well, she will have to say.
Okay, all right, I can respect that.
You know, I was, because I never knew. She told me I would have been transferred. So I was happy when I received the letter. So when I came in as comptroller, there was a meeting called, and they asked, because that thing had gone out of control. The horses had already bolted. So they asked what I would do. I said, okay, if I made the recommendations, I will have to implement the recommendations. So I went and I took the same re-engagement letter. So I asked the secretary whether the letter went out. Mrs. Montut sent it. She told me it never went out. I said, okay. I took the copy of the letter. I rearranged it. I went back to the Attorney General. We looked at it again. And I sent out that letter dated the 16th of September. That's the first letter I sent to Dr. Hilaire. But that letter I marked. So Dr. Hilaire signed for receiving the letter, because they're the Comptroller's register. So every when we have correspondence like this, when we give it to you, we ask you to sign the Comptroller's register. So that register stays with the Comptroller of Customs and is for confidential correspondence. So Dr. Hilaire, I submitted the letter dated the 16th of September to him, and I asked them to have him sign for receiving it. He did sign for receiving it. I have a copy of the document he signed for receiving it. He received it. The officers left my office about 10. He received it like about 10:20. He signed for it at 10:20. At 11:40, that letter was already on social media. Within an hour of that letter being signed, it was already on social media. So my phone was going off like a Christmas tree. So I keep telling them, but okay, just send me the letter. Because I wrote him, but I copied the deputy, I copied the DPP, I copied the PS Finance, I copied the Commissioner of Police. I copied these 4 people. And the letter showed up on social media. So I asked them to just send me a copy of the letter, because he signed for receiving his letter first. When he received his letter, the rest of the letters were on my desk. When that letter came out on social media.
So you sent it to 4 people.
They were on my desk. I still had them on my desk.
And the only copy of the letter that had gone out was
his. But that letter was marked. So by the time they start calling me, I gave the driver went to distribute the letters for me. So when they send the letter, I say, but that letter came from Ernest Hilaire. That could only be from Ernest Hilaire. So people start saying, but how you know it's from Ernest Hilaire? And I said, yes, because I marked it. And the mark that is on that letter is the same mark that is on the letter that is on social media.
So the leak was actually coming from
Ernest Hilaire.
From Ernest Hilaire, and he's playing victim.
Yes, that letter was leaked by Dr. Ernest Hilaire. I could say that with 100% conviction.
But nothing untoward had happened then. You were just saying what was.
Yes.
But you had what you call it, the perfect entry had not been completed.
Yes, so
the time that it was supposed to be, and you're asking him
to submit his documents,
submit the documents so that you can close that file and move on.
That's correct. I was actually telling him that the documents we have are actually in the name of the government of St. Lucia. So you need to submit your documents for the vehicle so that we could close this thing. And Laura, if I may say, up to now, unless the comptroller by some wave of his pen decides to accept that document is open in the system, should be open in the system, because you cannot complete it. It's incomplete.
So, as far as you know, from the time you started this, and now there has been, the perfect entry has not been completed.
Well, he has not submitted documents to complete the perfect entry.
To complete it.
So you could only complete the perfect entry with the documents.
And this was the beginning
of
what we call the RoverGate scandal. We're out of time.
Oh my God.
But you did say that the way we're going to go, this is not going to be one round till it's not going to be sufficient.
It has to be many round tables.
And we're going to deal with it.
I would love to.
We're going to deal with it because this is just the beginning. The duplicity, what's the word I'm looking for? When you're telling somebody something and you're trying to get them, the gaslighting.
Denial and gaslighting.
The duplicity and gaslighting. Remember, people, we keep telling you the secrets, the lies, and the propaganda. And we're going to continue with this. We're going to come back next week and we're going to further flesh out the RoverGate, because a lot of people think that Ernest has gotten away with fraud, and elections, and they said so.
Yes, elections
is around the corner. They're preparing, because I think it was Leo Clark who said the campaigning starts now. We don't want you to forget the things that they have done, the lies that they have told, the secrets that they have kept, the propaganda that they continue to spew. You should never forget. So we're going to continue with the RoverGate. No, we have not forgotten about CIP, but while Martinez is handling his business, that has nothing to do with us. We are going to flesh out the RoverGate scandal. Ernest Hilaire must be stopped. He cannot get a carte blanche to continue with scandal after scandal after scandal. So this is where we stop for today, and we'll come back next week where we're going to continue what happened after Ernest leaked the letter that you sent to him personally. Well, no, you didn't send the letter from your personal capacity, but you sent
As
it to
Comptroller of
him.
Customs,
You
yeah.
sent it as Comptroller of Customs. As we end, I want to say thank you to Donny LeBon and Jimmy Haynes for keeping this issue, this scandal alive. I want to remind the St. Lucians of the Labrie Nightingales. They're having their bingo on Saturday coming, so please purchase your tickets. We have some lovely prizes. And thank you to all of our sponsors. And of course, the Labrie branch of the United Workers' Party is having their dinner and dance on the 17th of this month. And we're asking you to support. You can get your tickets from the Secretariat or from any executive member of the United Workers' Party Labrie branch. Until next week, adieu. I know I went over.